Welcome to Empowered Transformation with your host, Christa Dawson. Over the next hour, you will learn about tools that will support your healing process and living a life full of purpose and joy. Now, here's Christa.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Empowered Transformation. I am your host, Christa Dawson. And before we get started and before I introduce our guest today, I am going to take just a minute to set the stage. So the focus of this series has been on energy psychology, and the tool that I was introduced to energy psychology to was EFT, or tapping, emotional freedom technique. And what I wanted to showcase today is energy psychology embodies a way to approach healing that is a lot more complete than just, let's say, doing talk therapy alone. You know, frequently talking it out just isn't enough. Your memories are not just in your brain, they're in your body, they're in your energy body. And so addressing healing with just talk alone, for example, is not enough. We are multidimensional beings, and approaching the healing process will require a multidimensional modality or modalities. And so energy psychology is a mode of therapy that invites not just talk, but talk and body. So mind-body connection, among other things. And so it is a very well-rounded mode of healing. And so this series has been largely focused on energy psychology and EFT. And if you have questions or are wondering more about energy psychology, you can go back to our very first episode where we talked about we defined energy psychology and EFT. If you have questions about EFT tapping, which is a game-changing tool for me, you can find a tutorial on my YouTube page. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. I want you to know that was that has been the focus of the show. And if you have questions, you can find them on my YouTube channel or go back to older shows. And in a nutshell, my experience with these tools over the last handful of years is that I've realized I have stepped into what I call a compassionate companionship with my mind, with my body, with my energy body, with my thoughts, my emotions, my emotional body. And so I realized I was cultivating this companionship, and that I was learning to work with myself in a way and work through the healing process in a way that was so powerfully effective. And there are many ways to developing this compassionate companionship. And so today we're going to hear from my guest, Rachel, on how she came to this compassionate companionship through other modalities. So before we get started on that, as always, I would like to start with getting intentional. So before we go any further, I'm going to invite you, if you're sitting, to take a few moments to align your posture, being aware that you are doing energy work all the time. And simple things like your posture can shift you out of a stuck place. So aligning your head over your shoulders, inviting your shoulders gently back and down, opening up that chest. Notice if it feels uncomfortable. If you're a person who armors a lot, that might be uncomfortable. Just notice that without judgment. And stacking your shoulders over your hips. If you're up and moving around and standing, just tune into your posture. If you are not driving, I welcome you to close your eyes. If you're driving, don't do that. So align your posture. If you're in a position to do this, I invite you to place your hand over your heart center, another really powerful tool, a very powerful centering tools. By the way, there are multiple tools in this sequence. So aligning your posture, placing your hand over your heart center, bringing all of your awareness into that beautiful heart center that has its own intelligence. And I want you to rest your tongue in your mouth. It's impossible to worry when your tongue is relaxed in the floor of your mouth. Allowing your breath to slow, putting a gentle smile on your face. It doesn't have to be anything big or awkward, just a gentle smile. This activates all kinds of healing in your body. And I just want to share my intention for this next hour, that you leave this hour with a new tool, that you learn something you didn't know before, that you leave feeling more hopeful and inspired to stay on or embark on a healing journey. And then most importantly, you leave with a deeper understanding of the importance of compassion for yourself on your journey wherever you are. So I want you to take a deep breath in with me, breathing in this intention. And a long, slow exhale out your mouth. Arrive. Welcome. And with that, I'm so honored and excited to introduce my guest today. Her name is Rachel Coons. I met Rachel a handful of years ago in a wellness center that we were working together in, and have followed her. She is no longer in Chico anymore. So I want her, I'm here to have her tell her story. She is a yoga instructor, or I knew her as a yoga instructor. I also knew her as a Reiki master. And she is also an author of how many books, Rachel?
There's 4 at this
point. Okay, which we'll hear more about later. So without any further ado, welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. So excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, I am too. I'm very excited about this. So Rachel, let's break open your story. We're going to start out by just learning how you were introduced to these tools. So I'm going to let you go ahead and start wherever it feels most appropriate to start this story.
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about that in the weeks leading up to our conversation today. And I think a nice starting point is kind of the end of my college years, right around, senior year, graduation, and the few years that followed. I was just going through a hard time. I was feeling a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, trying to figure out where my life would be going and what I would be doing post-college. And the way that worked for me, it brought out a lot of anxiety. And there were also periods of depression. So I was just feeling a lot and, really not as in tune yet with my body the way that I am now. And I think a lot of the energy that was trying to move was just getting stuck or getting kind of frazzled. I was just mentally not in the best place. And so that's when yoga came into my life. I was practicing a lot at a studio in Chicago, at a hot yoga studio. And that was so helpful to me because having grown up in Northern California, I just wasn't used to the cold weather. And so it was very comforting being in the heat and just being surrounded by other people, doing this intense, sweaty practice. And then there was also a moment where I walked into Barnes and Noble. I was just looking around in the DVDs, trying to find, a relaxing yoga practice, and happened to buy a DVD by Maya Fines, who's a very well-known Kundalini teacher. And so I had both of those two practices, like the fiery, Bikram practice, and then the slower, more restorative Kundalini practice, which really focuses on clearing energy and moving energy. And so, that was kind of the starting point for yoga for me.
Mm-hmm. A couple things in that, just this small piece. So I had a question, was there any like a catalyst that really brought you into awareness of, wow, I'm feeling really off. Something is not right. I'm out of balance. I feel stuck. I don't know how to get out. Was it multiple things? Was it a particular event that really was a catalyst for that?
A lot of it kind of blurs together from that time, but I do remember having some panic attacks. And that was the first time in my life that I'd ever experienced that. And anyone who's been through a panic attack knows it's like this feeling that you're dying, that the world is ending, that you can't breathe. It's just everything kind of zooms in and goes dark. And it's terrifying. Like, unless you have tools for how to navigate that, you don't really know what to do. And so, yeah, yoga was a part of it. I was also in therapy at the time, and just kind of working through different things. But I do remember those panic attacks being sort of a wake-up call of like, okay, this is more serious than it has been,
Right, right. What would you say, what was it about yoga that felt so soothing to you?
I definitely think it was just the physical exertion of the practice. I had always, been a pretty active person, pretty athletic, grew up, being on dance team in high school and things like that. And getting a real workout always has helped me to just,
Absolutely.
move my body and sweat. And I found with yoga, it was interesting because I wanted to do that more intense practice, and I eventually moved into a more restorative practice. It kind of balanced into that direction because, life is busy and intense as it is. Sometimes what we need is the opposite of that, to balance.
Yes, and I'm going to point out that for people that are prone to depression, if you've got stuff lurking around in the background that's going to lead you eventually to depression and anxiety, you're going to tend to be an adrenaline junkie. And in terms of yoga or Bikram yoga is the adrenaline junkies version of yoga.
Absolutely.
The flip side of that is the power of movement to help cultivate balance, to flush out toxins, whether, and in Bikrams, you're literally sweating like crazy. For those that don't know what Bikram yoga is, you're in a very hot, humid room going through an hour and a half full of intense poses. Anyway, so the sweating, all of those things, since we're talking about multiple ways to make mind-body connection, multiple ways to address your needs as a whole human being, physical activity, movement, sweating, powerful. And I love that you transitioned from and began to be more comfortable with the more yin or feminine, softer, easier, slower practice.
Yeah, I can remember that transition too, because I started going to a different studio where the focus was on restorative and the focus was on meditation. And I actually did this day-long silent retreat with two teachers. We had, maybe a group of like 20 people at this retreat center. And we went through some yoga. We did seated meditation. We did walking meditation. We even did like a lunch meditation where you're eating really slowly and you keep noble silence so you don't make eye contact with anyone that's there. And that was just, so eye-opening for me to spend a full 8 hours in silence, and it kind of changed my mindset, and just kind of opened me up in a new way. But yeah, it was very important to have both intense physical and then also the more mindful, slower, more relaxing version of yoga.
I think some of my favorite parts of yoga are the connection of breath with movement. And so yoga is a profoundly powerful tool to bring you into your body. Most of us are all up in our heads and we're pretty comfortable being there. And that's to our detriment. It's not helping you. And remembering that, we've all heard that the body follows the mind. Well, the mind can follow the body. And when you're stuck, when you're the mind is running wild, using your body to help cue yourself into a state of a more relaxed state, making that mind-body connection is such an important part of the journey. So you found that through yoga and have, a full range of experiences with yoga, which, by the way, if you don't know, there are many different types of yoga. If we have time, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's so much when you're new to yoga that you're trying to sift through, figuring out which style is the right, entryway, and then finding a teacher that resonates with you, finding a space that feels comfortable and feels safe. I think, if you're new to yoga, just remember, like, it's a little bit of a process and it does take a little bit of time, and it's worth it. And you really do have to trust yourself in that process. I always, when I'm teaching, I try to remind people too that what the teacher's saying is like the starting point, it's the guidance, but you really have to take it one step further and see if it works for you. You're always allowed to skip things or, modify things that don't feel right in your body. So
Love that. Love that. So you're in therapy, you realize that, wow, there's something big going on here. So you furthered your healing process through the introduction to yoga, and then in walks Reiki.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yes. So Reiki, actually, the way that I found Reiki, I did a massage. I bought this Groupon for a massage, and it also included Reiki. And I thought, okay, I don't really know what that is, but sounds cool. And the lady who gave me the massage ended up being my Reiki teacher. She's this incredible woman who just is so dialed into energy. And, she had such a light touch during the massage. I couldn't figure out why I felt so amazing afterwards, because I had asked for like a deep tissue massage, but she was clearing all this stuck energy. And, that was just incredible. Like, I walked out of there feeling like I had practiced yoga, done a massage, done a spa day, like all of it. I just felt so good. And so, yeah, that's how I pursued Reiki. I just wondered, like, wow, how did she do that? How can I use this tool for myself?
And so how long after that first experience did you pursue getting certified?
I think it was only like a few months later.
Okay.
I kept in touch with her, and I knew about her training that was coming up. And it was actually around the same time that I did my yoga teacher training as well. So I was really in a mode of personal development and, finding tools that would help support me and help support my teaching as well.
And what did Reiki, what were the big things that it brought to the table for you?
I think one of the biggest ones was just being able to connect the emotions with the body. So seeing where there's that connection between maybe like an area of your body that's holding tension and the emotions or the memory that's behind it. I was starting to have breakthroughs in terms of my own belief about myself too. Like, self-worth was a topic that would come up every time I did a session with her, and using my voice, like realizing, okay, my throat was a little bit blocked, and that's something that, I've worked on over the years, but that took a long time to find that healing.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful, we're talking a little bit about the idea of energy centers, and frequently we'll store limiting beliefs about ourselves in different parts of our body. If you want to know more about the energy centers, there is an episode specific to that. And I don't remember which one it is. It's with Tabitha Bird Weaver, and she goes into a little more detail about the chakra system. But the understanding that our experiences are not just in our head, they're in our body. And Reiki is one of many ways that you can begin to start moving that around and clearing that. So with that, we are going to take our break. We will be right back, where we will be talking with Rachel about her journey into sobriety. We'll be right back.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Are you tired of feeling stuck? Are you suffering from a chronic illness, addiction issues, lack of motivation, a negative mindset, and a lack of purpose? Do you dream of a life full of purpose and the ability to respond rather than react? And what if you could see yourself through the eyes of compassion while you're in the process of creating the life of your dreams? It will be a process. Dream Makers is designed to empower transformation from being stuck and unsatisfied to a life that is moving forward with purpose and joy. You will get clear on your dreams and the limiting subconscious beliefs that block you from seeing them through. You will learn and be supported in implementing tools that develop the mind-body connection and rewire your brain for success and mastery. Dream Makers is a 12-week online course with weekly live Zoom meetings, a book and workbook, access to accountability, and group support. Spots are limited. Experts say that if a person could do one thing to increase health and happiness, expressing gratitude would be it. Gratitude is an easy, attainable way to improve your outlook and begin rewiring your brain for resilience. You will learn the clinically proven benefits of a gratitude practice, why and how gratitude works to rewire your brain for resilience, and most importantly, a simple but powerful way to amplify your gratitude practice that will benefit your mind and body while improving your outlook.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You're listening to Empowered Transformation with Christa Dawson. If you have questions or want to contact Christa, go to christadawson.com. Now, back to the show.
And we are back, and I'm really excited about this segment. But before we get started, I wanted to just take a moment to affirm what went on in between our breaks. You heard a little bit about my gratitude practice. Gratitude is an incredibly easy way to start cultivating shift and change in your life. And I have a really nice free gratitude practice outline for you on my website. So I encourage you to go there and make use of it. Adopt that gratitude practice. It's life-changing. So, Rachel, we learned about your journey into depression, and which is an invitation into and an opportunity to dig in, go to work, find out what's going on under there. Mm-hmm. And in that journey, she discovered yoga, and Reiki, which helped cultivate a mind-body connection for her, and assisted her in her healing process. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about something that is near and dear to both of our hearts, and that is the gift of sobriety. So Rachel, tell me how all of this happened.
Yeah. Thank you, first of all, for, just being willing to dive into this topic and, share that conversation, because I think it's something so many people think about and they aren't sure where to start or what to do. I didn't show up at a meeting as a start to my sobriety journey. There wasn't this really intense, situation where I had to go to treatment or I had to do something like that, but it was kind of a gradual transition, and it circled around the end of a relationship. I was in a relationship for, I think, 5 years, and, it became a toxic situation. It was an abusive situation, and there was a lot of drinking. So, that was a huge catalyst for me, just seeing the breakdown of what happened, and, just these intense moments with my ex that, were highly traumatic for me. And, in the months and weeks after the actual breakup, I realized that, I was still choosing to drink. And I had this one moment where I was standing in the grocery store, about to buy wine, realizing I actually want to drink this wine so that I can get really just drunk and forget about everything that's going on and numb my pain. Basically, I had that moment, and I just had this realization of if I choose to go down this way on this path, it's going to get bad. It has the potential to get really dark. I've seen what drinking can do to people. I've seen it in my family. I've seen it, in that relationship I was in. And I thank God and whoever else was there that day, because it was just kind of this click in my mind of I need to not drink, And at the time I kind of had it in my head of I'm going to take a month off of drinking and see how that feels. And at first the focus was very much on the physical, no hangovers, feeling more hydrated, feeling like my digestion improved, just feeling more energetic and clear-minded. But the farther down that road I went, the more emotional healing there was as a result of not drinking. And, it was just a lot of waking up in many different ways. It was choosing to be a lot more conscious about how I live my life and how I spent my time. There's just a different clarity that you have when you're not using any substance to numb yourself from feeling your own emotions. So it's been a very amazing path, being sober.
You bring up something so important when you give up something like that. So when people develop addictions or, alcohol issues or substance abuse issues or behavioral issues, the motivators for those addictions are filling holes. You're trying to avoid something or fill a hole of pain, or get something that you need from it. And, my personal experience, I had been struggling with alcohol abuse for years. And I had, tried to stop, and I'd stop for a while and I'd start again. And it was just the vicious cycle. And then in walks energy psychology and EFT, and I have this really powerful experience with it. And I start the training certification process, and I began to experience how it felt to be in my body and connected, and feeling immediately the effects of alcohol when even if it was one or two drinks. Mm-hmm. That I felt disconnected, and I mean sips. I don't mean like whole drinks. I mean, immediately I would feel the effects of that and the barrier between my connection with myself, mm-hmm. what I knew the potential was, and what was robbed when I did that. And it wouldn't just happen for the night I was drinking. It would follow me into the next day, which, by the way, was every day for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. And how I felt without it became more important than being in it. And that I cannot emphasize enough the importance of having, it is so helpful in making that decision that you have something to fill that hole with, or that you have something to anchor to. My being connected with myself in this work that I'm doing, that I believe is my life's purpose work, is more important than this alcohol. And that was, for me, the catalyst, or the piece that really helped me make that decision from I'll commit to a few weeks of sobriety to, you know what, I need to commit to a lot more than a few weeks or even a few months. I need to commit to a year. And after a year, why the heck would I start again? That was kind of my goal. Anyway, so having something that felt bigger and more important, and something that filled that space that the alcohol was filling. And for me, it was having this connection that I discovered with myself through this work that I was doing. Mm-hmm. How long have you been sober, Rachel?
It's been 4 or 5 years now. I was actually just thinking about that because I wondered if you would ask that question. Uh-huh. I wish I knew the exact date that I chose to stop drinking, and I don't. But it was about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's interesting you talked about, stopping for a while and then drinking again and kind of going through that cycle. I did have about a year into it, a moment where I drank a few glasses of wine. And that for me was such confirmation that it was something I did not want to do anymore. I had, the initial high of I feel so relaxed and I feel good or whatever. But afterwards, I just had so much come up, and so many negative memories, and just this feeling of despair of before, what it was like, and times where I drank just to get through everything that was going on at the time. So that was such an interesting moment of, okay, I tried drinking again, and here's how it made me feel. And it was so clear at that point,
Do you think, I feel for people that are on that train, going back and forth, and, you had your experience with your healing journey, and you had developed some skills that helped you to really anchor into yourself. And so you had that to go back to. For people that are trying to get sober without that, how hard would that be? To not have the,
Yeah, you need tools and you need a community. Like it's different for everyone. But I think you have to have people in your life who are sober too, who you can talk to.
Right.
And there gets to be a point where you kind of have to declare it. There's going to be situations where you're invited to drink and you have to say no. You have to let people know that that's not something that you do. And that can be so uncomfortable at first. Our culture is centered around drinking. Like it's a huge part of so many community gatherings, families, like just, every holiday, every special occasion. And
I read a book as I was walking my way toward making the decision to quit that was really instrumental. It was This Naked Mind by Amy Grace. It helped me understand more about addiction, where it comes from, the origins of addictions, biologically, neurologically, what's going on. And it really set the stage. It set the stage in terms of our society and how everything we do is around alcohol. And so you have to be really prepared to make that commitment. So for me, that was a really helpful book. Did you have what have been your supports along the way in helping you to stay sober?
That's a great question. There are a number of books that I've read that I've loved. One of the ones I love the most, the author, her name is Laura McCowan, and her book is called We Are the Luckiest. She's actually releasing her second book this week. It comes out tomorrow. It's called Push Off From Here, I believe. And she just writes in this really raw way where she just goes into these moments of her life where she was just absolutely at rock bottom. She had this story about her daughter and how she got drunk and like left her daughter alone for a night, and just the shame of that the next morning. And I don't know, I love books like that where they just really get into the details of it, and they're not afraid to say like, this is what happened and this is how it changed my life. I think tools wise, I think therapy is a huge part of it. Like if you can really get in and work with someone one-on-one, who can support you and who is an expert in how to do that. And, if things are really bad and you're really deep in addiction, like you might need tools like AA, you might need treatment. There's absolutely no shame in picking up either of those options. And, it's worth it. It's the difference between potentially losing your life or not losing your life. And I just have so much, like, my heart goes out so much to anyone who's willing to take that step for themselves.
Absolutely. I'm 3 years sober, and it took a period, just stepping back from it. There's a whole process, much like you said, you just enjoy feeling better. And the longer I was sober, the more I enjoyed it. It's just become a way of life for me. But over time, then what has begun to rear its head is other ways that addiction is still alive and well in my life. And that was hard. Sobriety from alcohol was just the beginning. And the awareness of the propensity for addiction. And once it takes one to know one. And you learn to see where, wow, I'm getting the same dopamine hit or the same benefit that I get from taking a drink of alcohol from shopping or from compulsive behaviors in general, and began to see, wow, addiction is alive and well all over the place, which then required, you got to keep digging, and for me, that's just my nature. I want to get to the bottom of it. And it wasn't good enough. I still was seeing the effects of me trying to fill holes with behaviors. I wasn't doing with alcohol anymore, but I was using other means. And so be honest with yourself and do yourself a huge favor. Do whatever work you need to do. There is a reason why you have a propensity for addiction.
Mm-hmm.
There were parts of you that got left behind somewhere back in the way back. And educating yourself on the origins of addiction, how it affects your neurology, how childhood development is affected by neglect or
Trauma.
trauma, right? The wound, so for most of us, addiction is the byproduct of a wound or wounds. And so you might get rid of it in one place, but it's going to come up somewhere else more than likely. And so you stay with it
Mm-hmm.
and you keep digging and you educate yourself. And from that education comes compassion. Wow, I was in pain.
Yeah. You have to recognize in what ways you were hating yourself.
Yes.
In what ways were you punishing yourself? In what ways did you feel like you didn't deserve better? And just trying to numb yourself from feeling the reality of whatever it was.
Absolutely. That is, yeah. And so that is really, again, just healing in general. That is the heart of healing, is the return to compassion for yourself, understanding that, whether you're struggling with substance abuse or behavioral addictions, these are all just ways, they're coping mechanisms that you have adopted to avoid discomfort. Mm-hmm. And they're going to keep you in discomfort. And so you're going to do yourself a huge favor by facing into that, no matter what that looks like. So that's big stuff.
Yeah, that's huge.
And so you're working on a book right now specific to your journey with sobriety. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been interesting how it's evolved even since we talked about it. There's aspects of, life being sober, and there's also aspects of embodiment and just my relationship to my body. So it's kind of this blend between those two.
So good. So we're going to pause right there. And we are going to return from our break. We're going to talk a little bit more about this blending that she's talking about and hear more about Rachel's authorship, which has been a big part of her journey as well. So with that, we will be right back. We'll see you on the other side.
Follow us on Twitter at VoiceAmericaTRN. Get the lowdown on guests, new shows, and your favorites. That's VoiceAmericaTRN. Experts say that if a person could do one thing to increase health and happiness, expressing gratitude would be it. Gratitude is an easy, attainable way to improve your outlook and begin rewiring your brain for resilience. You will learn the clinically proven benefits of a gratitude practice, why and how gratitude works to rewire your brain for resilience, and most importantly, a simple but powerful way to amplify your gratitude practice that will benefit your mind and body while improving your outlook. Are you tired of feeling stuck? Are you suffering from a chronic illness, addiction issues, lack of motivation, a negative mindset, and a lack of purpose? Do you dream of a life full of purpose and the ability to respond rather than react? And what if you could see yourself through the eyes of compassion while you're in the process of creating the life of your dreams? It will be a process. Dreammakers is designed to empower transformation from being stuck and unsatisfied to a life that is moving forward with purpose and joy. You will get clear on your dreams and the limiting subconscious beliefs that block you from seeing them through. You will learn and be supported in implementing tools that develop the mind-body connection and rewire your brain for success and mastery. Dreammakers is a 12-week online course with weekly live Zoom meetings, a book and workbook, access to accountability, and group support. Spots are limited.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You're listening to Empowered Transformation with Christa Dawson. If you have questions or want to contact Christa, go to ChristaDawson.com. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. So we're going to begin this last segment with a quick little tip for you to take into your personal experience, and that is the tip for this week is resting your tongue in your mouth. You heard me share that as we opened up this morning, and it is a tool that I use with my clients all the time, over and over and over again. I have my clients come back to me saying, oh my gosh, that was such a powerful tool. And so just to briefly explain what's going on there, when you're resting your tongue in your mouth, just allowing it to relax, you're activating a giant nerve that starts at the stem of the brain stem and goes all the way down your spine. It's called the vagus nerve. It's attached to all of your major organs. And that vagus nerve is responsible for the rest and digest. It's responsible for activating what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, or the brakes. So if you think in terms of the autonomic nervous system, it's all the stuff that your body does on its own without you thinking about it. You have a gas pedal and you have a brake. Your fight or flight is the gas pedal, and your rest and digest is the brake. So resting your tongue in your mouth activates that parasympathetic nervous system, that vagus nerve. It is impossible to worry when your tongue is resting in your mouth. The hard part can be keeping it there. So if you are a person with a lot of trauma, this tool can be really difficult. And so again, it's a practice, it's a cultivated skill, it is a powerful one. So I invite you to explore this tool of resting your tongue in your mouth. So that's your tip for the week from me. We left our last segment talking about a project that Rachel is working on, a book specific to sobriety, which we're going to talk about her authorship here pretty soon, or this will lead into a little more detail on her authorship. And at first she thought it was just going to be around alcohol and sobriety, and she's realizing there's a melting and a melding between her sobriety and her relationship with her body. And so I'm going to have her elaborate a little bit for you on that.
Yeah, so this next book that I'm working on, it's a memoir of sorts. And, memoir is a category that I've been heavily involved in over the last couple of years. I edit a lot of memoirs and read a lot of memoirs. I just find it really inspiring seeing, when someone is able to frame what's happened to them and show, how it grew them, basically. But when I think about sobriety, I come up against these moments that are very visceral, right? Like we were talking about before with a panic attack, where it's like, it's just so immediate and present in your body. And like just that notion that when you're not sober, you're disconnected from that, right? You can't feel everything. And so I'm not there yet. I'm kind of in the process of working on this book, but I'm just exploring these different moments where, I felt acute pain, or, had a really almost transcendent experience of my own body. Even looking at everyday moments, like the act of looking into a mirror, either looking at my own body or looking into my own eyes. And then other physical practices, I've been doing a lot of running over the last couple of years. So I've had a lot of experiences, knowing my body in a different way from that. And there's been moments where it's healthy and it's healing. And I think there's also been moments where I take it too far and I'm actually punishing my body, So it's like exploring that relationship of how I experience my body and feel my body, but then also talking about sobriety. I think it's just all woven together. They aren't two separate things. They're both part of my life and my story.
So it kind of sounds like sobriety was a way that you avoided intimacy with yourself, awareness of yourself, knowing yourself, loving yourself. It was a way that you avoided that, and sobriety has really invited you into the ongoing journey of deepening your relationship with yourself, with your body. Is that?
Yes. Yeah, I think for me, at least, the influence of alcohol was always keeping me one layer away from the true, experience of myself. whether that's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. It's taking away that filter, that fog that's, skewing your perception of yourself. When you're sober, you're just absolutely clear.
Right.
And that can be really painful.
Yes.
But it's the choice that I'd rather make.
Beautiful. I love that. That's so powerful. So good. So I had mentioned earlier that healing is a multi-layered process, and Rachel experienced this multi-layered process through connecting with her body and making that mind-body connection through her yoga practice, through her physical activity, through her sobriety. She was made more acquainted with her subtle body or her energy body through Reiki, as well as the connection between her limiting beliefs and how it manifests in the body. There is a profound, there is such a connection between your limiting beliefs and your physical issues. You cannot separate the two. So those were met through yoga and Reiki. And then there is a part that we can't leave behind, and that is the cognitive part. This is as much you can't rely solely on cognition. You can have all the understanding in the world why you do the things that you do and still be powerless to change the behavior. So we can't rely on cognition alone, but it is most certainly a part of the healing process. And for you, Rachel, you're one of the pieces that helped you cognitively. You did therapy, growing that cognitive understanding, but you also write. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I've always been a writer, since I was a kid. I've always loved writing stories, and, I excelled in school as a writer for English classes and things like that. I started my college years as a journalist and then ended up a poet. So just all sorts of different writing. But I think for me, there was this huge shift 3 or 4 years ago when I did start my first book project. I decided, I'm going to publish a short book. All of my books are actually fairly short. And this one was just kind of an essay with these pictures interwoven from a yoga photo shoot that I did in the desert. And I just wanted it to be, something punchy, something interesting, sort of around the idea of, inspiring and finding ways to kind of unlock your potential. But I knew when I was creating that project, I just wanted it to be an experiment. Like I just wanted to get on Amazon, figure out how you actually can put a book on there, hit publish, and see what happens. And that was the perfect way to enter publishing for me. Like, there's this whole other world where you can go the traditional publishing route and work with a huge publisher and all of that. But the route that I took was very self-motivated. It was very much like, this is all within my control. I can mess around and do whatever I want. I designed the cover. So I got in there and got my hands dirty and had fun with it. And I think that gave me this new perspective of just how possible it was, and how, I'd always kind of believed in myself that I could write a book. But then once I did it, I realized, oh, I can totally do this, and it was hugely empowering for me. And yeah, it has just evolved from there.
Right. That empowering word, one of the things that we've talked about over the last month or two as we've been preparing for this, the idea of going from surviving and being in survival and finding tools to help you through those painful parts of your, experience. But we can hope for so much more than that. This isn't just about surviving and using tools to survive. This is about thriving. And you can not only count on feeling better, but actually being really excited about your life, getting in tune with what your life's purpose is, and not just surviving and getting through, but holy moly, I love my life and I love this growth, and I'm not perfect, but I'm okay with that. And I'm growing every day. I love the idea authorship or writing really forces you, you're not just sitting down, jotting down some notes. You're having to really complete an idea, which makes you really sit in with yourself. And you're sharing your very personal experiences, right? This is
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was the transition for me, because before that, I had, been working on my blog for a long, long time. I started Alive in the Fire, my blog, around the time that I started practicing yoga. So it was this really interesting space where I could reflect on my experiences and, kind of laugh about the funny things that would happen in yoga class, or talk about how it was actually changing me and, what that was like. But it's very different to write, 1,000-word, 2,000-word blog post than it is to look at a book and how you're going to organize something that's a little bit longer, a little bit more, a full project. And I think my editing experience has given me a lot of insight into that too, because a lot of times what I'm doing is helping people organize, here's an idea, but it doesn't necessarily make sense the first time you write it. You've got to add transitions and smooth things out and get people to understand what it is you're trying to say.
Right. So we're coming to the time where we have to start pulling things together. So one of your jobs, you edit and do coach
a little bit. Mm-hmm.
A little bit. So for people that are interested maybe in learning how to, or writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Can you briefly tell us tell us what's out there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can find me on Amazon. My newest book is one that I would say, check out if you're interested. It's called Empath Warrior Mindset. And it's a short book of mindset meditations on some different topics of just things that have helped me as a highly sensitive person to navigate, the world, to understand my life, to improve my life. I do talk a little bit about sobriety in that book, and practices like yoga and meditation. And then I have 2 other shorter books called Inner Fire and Vessel. One's a book of poems, and one is that book of writing and photography that we had talked about earlier. But you can find me on Amazon. You can also find me on my website, which is rachelkuntz.com. I share some of my portfolio of other writings I've done. And I've got my blog, aliveinthefire.com. But if anyone out there is interested in connecting with me, my website is a great place. You can send me an email, and would love to hear what projects you have going on.
Perfect. So tell us again where we would find your website.
rachelkuntz.com.
Okay, rachelkuntz.com. And then you're also on Facebook?
Mm-hmm. I'm on
Alive
Facebook.
In the Fire.
Mm-hmm. I'm also on Instagram, Alive in the Fire Yoga.
Nice. Good. It has been such a pleasure to have you on the show and to talk very openly about our personal experiences, and hearing your story has been so inspiring. Thank you. You can find me at christadawson.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter, which goes out monthly, to keep you apprised of what's up and coming for me. You can also find me on YouTube and Facebook. And so before we end, I would like you all to align your posture again, place your hand over your heart, put a gentle smile on your face, rest your tongue in your mouth, and just take a moment to feel gratitude. Don't just think it, feel gratitude for being here today, for learning something new, for honoring yourself by being here and honoring your healing journey by being here. Feel that gratitude as you take a deep breath in through your nose. A long, slow exhale out. Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining Rachel and I today. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to Empowered Transformation with Christa Dawson. We hope you have gained insight into the healing process and added tools to your tool belt. Until we talk again, have a beautiful week.